afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today, sponsored by Interactive Brokers. It's Alyssa Quorum here with Justin Nielsen, and on this Friday, we're going to be breaking down the chart action for CrowdStrike, as well as PagSeguro and Square, setting up ahead of earnings. But first, let's take a look at the major indexes. We did reverse to close the day lower today across the board. The Nasdaq down about 0.75%. So I guess this just aligns with our line of thought of maybe potentially time for a pullback here.
Yeah, and not necessarily a big one. It just needed a break, and so 0.75%. Now, I will tell you that yesterday, because of that bullish reversal we saw, it was kind of like, oh, maybe that was it. You know, maybe it was just a 2-day, 3-day pullback that we were looking at, and now we're back, you know, game on. But, you know, today things kind of took a turn. We're still holding above yesterday's lows. This is still... if you look at the NASDAQ composite, if you put an exponential 21-day moving average on there, it's still holding above that level. So, you know, when a market is trending, it does tend to stay above that 21-day exponential moving average, and that's what we're seeing right now. Now, we're going to probably see weekly losses across the board on, you know, all the major indexes, but when you look at it, it's just not much. It's
fractional.
You know, fractional, maybe 0.3%, you know, maybe 1%, you know, getting up there. But given how much we've come up, that's not too bad.
Right. Well, we will be keeping an eye on those technical levels to see if anything changes. But in the meantime, let's take a look at a few individual names, starting with CrowdStrike, because we love to have these IPO stocks on our radar. And we saw an IPO-based breakout for CrowdStrike today. It finished the day up about 15%. So let's dive in to the specifics here with this breakout. How do we feel about how quality of a breakout this was?
Well, it was definitely a very strong move. As you said, it closed 15% up from the previous day. That was a breakaway gap. You know, there was a level of resistance right there at 75, another level of resistance at 80. It blew through both of those. The after hours market, it was up 80, you know, fairly shortly after its earnings came out. And keep in mind, you know, just to kind of make sure that people understand on the fundamentals on this. This doesn't pass our normal CAN-SLIM criteria. It does not have earnings right now. It's not profitable, but it has triple-digit revenue growth. And this is not revenue growth, you know, based on 1 million or 2 million, and oh, now you've, you know, reached 3 million or 4 million. This is actually big numbers like 96 million per quarter. You know, that's what it had the last quarter. So these are big numbers. This is not something that's just a drop in the bucket. So this is something that has very strong revenue growth, and that's one of the reasons why it really has our attention. Same thing with Beyond Meat. You know, we've been talking about that. It's not profitable, but it has that triple-digit sales growth.
Yes, so we like looking at those IPOs that are showing strong sales growth. What, at least 50 to 60%?
The bigger
growth.
the better.
The bigger the better.
And here again, you want to make sure that it's not like the small numbers, because then it's an easy bar to hit.
Right.
You know, but when you're dealing with, you know, numbers like 96 million, that's a little bit tougher. Now,
and CrowdStrike comes from a really strong group. So that's another thing.
Right, exactly. So the group, you know, you've got tons of names in there.
The cybersecurity.
The cybersecurity software. So it's not alone. And you've got, you know, some of the biggest names of this year are in that group. You know, cybersecurity, CyberArk, you've got Zscaler, just a lot of the big leaders are in that group. So now in terms of the breakout today, it hit a high of 85.85 very early on. But it never really crossed that level again. It basically reversed quickly in the first 5-minute bar, and that's why we sometimes will take a look at that first 5-minute bar and see how things look. Now it started approaching kind of a previous resistance level around 80, you know, 83, 84, but it just couldn't quite surpass it. So you see this kind of close in the mid-range of its trading range for today.
Which is somewhat positive,
but it's still positive given that it was up 15%. So, you know, maybe you hold off on buying it at the open and wait to see how it trades, and that would have saved you some points. But this is still something that looks very strong and definitely deserves a place on your radar.
Yeah, well, we will be keeping tabs on this one for sure. But let's flip our attention over to PagSeguro, which has been on quite a run since breaking out of a cup with handle base not too long ago. It's run up 44% in 39 trading days. That's a pretty explosive move.
Yeah, so if you got it then, good for you. You know, have a great weekend. You know, but It's also something to just keep in mind is that this is extended. Stocks do not go up like this forever, and you have to just be very careful of that climactic action, because the euphoria can strike hard, and when things kind of end for it, it can come down hard. Just as quickly as it came up, it can come down even harder.
Right.
So what you have to know about this is it's about 27% above its 50-day moving average. That's a little excessive from what we normally see. And if you look at a weekly chart, this has been up week after week after week after week. That's something that's very hard for a stock to sustain. So just be very careful right here. The last few days, we've seen it kind of consolidate a little bit. It's been trying to reach up into new high territory, keeps on hitting some resistance there. If you see a big bearish reversal here, or some more distribution, some heavy distribution, that could be a warning that, hey, you're looking at some short-term weakness at least. And that would not be unexpected here. So just if you own this, be careful. If you don't own it, you missed it, sorry, wait for the next opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, we at IBD are all about making data-driven decisions and looking at the research, and that's the basis for our rules.
Right.
So we have that 20 to 25% profit-taking zone. Now, of course, that doesn't mean take everything off the table at that point if it's not showing any signs of weakness.
Right. Sometimes what we'll do is we'll use kind of like, take 20 to 25%, but if it's something that looks really strong, give it a little bit more room, and maybe you use like the 10-day moving average as a short-term indicator. If it crosses below that, then you can, maybe remove some shares. And it doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. You can remove some shares at 20 to 25%, maybe remove some more a little bit later, or if you start seeing some weakness. So there's a lot of different ways to play it. You don't have to just say, I'm going to sell everything or nothing.
Yeah, and maybe your time horizon. If you have a big cushion, maybe you wait for one of those longer term trend lines.
Yeah, if you're a long term holder, I mean, this is really kind of early on in the move potentially for this stock. The IPO wasn't that long ago, and the payment processors, there's a lot to be excited about there, and they're in South America, they're in Brazil. There's a lot of opportunities. So as a long term hold, you might be looking at an opportunity if this pulls back to maybe add to your position, and there's nothing wrong with that.
That is very true. And elsewhere in the payments processing space, we want to take a look at Square. It could be setting up heading into its earnings report in early August. It's shaping somewhat of a bottoming type base here after selling off last year.
So the big thing is it's now back above its 200-day moving average line, and that 200-day moving average line, that's the black line that you see on these charts right here. So it's above both the 200 and the 50-day moving average line. So this is something that isn't beaten down as much. It's back above those longer term trend lines. And what we're seeing right now is it's got kind of a 82, 88 buy point from this cup shape. But what I'd like to see is for this handle that seems to be forming, for that to continue. We've got earnings coming up on August 1st after the close, and so if we can just kind of settle down here, form that handle, maybe see volume dry up, we really like to see that, because it means institutions aren't ditching this. It means it's just kind of consolidating.
You're shaking out the weak holders.
Yep. And then the earnings could be a catalyst for a breakout here above that 82, 88 area, or again, we might just see a handle form, and that could provide an alternate entry, but that could be an ideal situation, and Square has definitely shown it's able to make big moves.
Yeah, that it has, and analysts are expecting earnings growth of 62% for the year. So that's strong double-digit bottom line growth, and it's had a track record of quite strong top line growth as well.
Right, and so that is your more classical can slim.
Yeah.
You've got everything firing on all cylinders for that one.
All right, well, that one is on our radar as well. Hope those are some interesting names, and for more stocks that should be on your watch list heading into earnings, you and Chris talked about a few stocks potentially setting up with earnings in the coming week on this week's podcast episode.
Right. And more importantly, there were those kind of 5 tips on what you should be looking for, how you handle earnings season, between the stocks that you own and maybe the stocks that you're looking at.
All right. Well, for those key insights and more, make sure you check out investors.com/podcast for the latest episode of Investing with IBD. New episodes out every Thursday. All right, and we do also have a webinar coming up that we want to let everyone know about, coming up on July 30th. It's at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, how to trade like a market shark. I'm guessing coinciding with Shark Week.
My
Gotta do
son loves
something
sharks, so
fun
I'm,
with
I'm
that.
maybe going to have him watch the webinar.
Oh, well, there you go. All right. And you can head to investors.com/webinar to sign up for that now. All right, everyone, we hope you have such a great weekend, and we'll see you right back here next week.